Featherweight banger coming up this weekend. I certainly expect to finish. We have Kuya, Josh Culibao welcoming China's Shayilan, the Wolverine, to the octagon. And for Shayilan, a guy coming in out of China, UFC Performance Institute in Shanghai. And unfortunately for him, his teammates didn't really have a great time out just a number of cards ago, UFC 261. Put on impressive performances for the most part, and for Shayilan, looking to kind of recapture some of that thunder under Dean Amazinger over there with the PI. And listen, this guy has had an absolute roller coaster ride of a time making it to the UFC. He had 6 fights last year, went 5-1. He has a win over Alexei Oleinik from last year, but not that Alexei Oleinik, of course. And this is a guy that spent some time at featherweight quite a while ago, most of his time at lightweight. So it'll be interesting to see the weight cut for him, especially coming over to the States, acclimatizing, getting ready for the fight. But an absolute joy to watch fight. And I mean, this was one of those things, and if you're trying to do tape study for this fight, take it from me. What you're going to want to do, go to Tapology, find the characters up close to his English spelling of his name, pop those over to Google, and check out some websites you've probably never seen before if you're an English speaker. But I had a joy watching his fights. If you go back through, you can see those 6 that he had last year. And the one that I want to highlight, the loss to Rangju at WLF Wars 47, not that long ago, back in September of last year. After that, picks up a couple of wins with JCK, whose production values are really second to none. And I'm not getting paid to say that. I actually really did enjoy watching his fights. I have a full page of notes on this one, Matt, because again, it was a lot of fun going back. But if you look at it for Shayilan, if he's going to have a lot of success striking, a lot of good blitzes, he can throw a pretty good right hand, but typically he's going to want to rinse and repeat with the takedowns, take his opponent down, gain position, hammer away at them. He's taking on a really interesting guy in Joshua Culibao, almost 27 years old. And his 2 UFC fights, absolute polar opposites.
They really have been. For Culibao, I don't know if I'm going to lump him into that category of anytime he fights, he could get a performance bonus because, hey, it just could happen. Or it could just be a dud. But I am a firm believer that there is a good fighter in Josh Culibao who can work his way up the ranks. Because here's the thing. You can't have a split decision that, and I'm not throwing you under the bus, but that you thought he won and that a lot of other people who I would say I respect in the MMA media world thought that he beat Charles Jourdain. Charles Jourdain is like the hotness all of a sudden. Now, he's not the biggest deal in the UFC, but having a close fight with a guy like that at least proves that you belong in the UFC. And we talk about this a lot. You can lose fights and you can win fights, and sometimes you can win a fight but still not really gain much stock by doing it. And sometimes you can lose a fight and gain a ton of stock. That was one of those fights where at the end of it, you were just like, hey, great job, both guys, because they both showed off every aspect of MMA. And that's the great thing I like about Culibao. You mentioned it, almost 27 years of age, just coming into his prime right now, and he has a lot of skills that you really like out of a young up-and-coming striker. He's got great power from both sides. He's got great overhands. Now, the one thing I'm not a huge fan about with Culibao is he can get overwhelmed with volume. When you look in the Jourdain fight, when Jourdain was having success, I'm always going to think about Aljamain Sterling fighting Petr Yan when I think about this, but remember on the feet when Sterling was having success, he would just kind of paw at Yan, make Yan put his hands up. Culibao can kind of get in those defensive shields sometimes, and I'm not saying that Shailiang is going to be the guy who's going to go out there and, throw a ton of volume on him like he's Max Holloway and then shoot for a double leg, but it is a position that Culibao can sometimes get caught in. But the one thing that Culibao does have, and that he does rely on maybe a little bit too much, is he does have big power on the feet. And he's a guy who, if you are using that forward movement to try to crash into him, using your takedown attempts or your volume, you've always got to be careful, because just one big counter shot by him, because he does have good power in both hands, one big power shot can put pretty much anyone's lights out. And that's why this is a great litmus test for Sha Liang in this fight.
In this fight, we look at it for Josh Culibao. Yeah, going back, watching that fight against Charles Jourdain, first round Culibao, no deal. Dropped him in the first round. One of the judges scored that round for Charles Jourdain. How crazy is that? Because judging doesn't make any sense.
Was it in Texas?
I don't know. It didn't make any sense at all. But yeah, Culibao was able to drop him in the first. He beat him in the first regardless, but he dropped him as well. Second round, really, really close. If you scored it for Culibao, I kind of did on the second or third viewing, then so be it. If you go to MMA decisions, 14 had it 29-28 for Culibao, and then you had 3 that had it 29-28, 3 had it Culibao, 14 had it for Jourdain. The judges had it, yikes. There was a 10-9 for 2 with Culibao in the first round, but again, one had it full across the board, 30-27 Jourdain. The point of it is, for Culibao, really good striker. Like, something that we didn't get to see at all in his first fight. And listen, it's hard to look good against Jalen Turner on short notice when you're popping up a weight class. And Jalen Turner's a big guy for 55 anyway. A guy that I wish we got to see more often. But you look at the fight that he had in his last one out, and you can really tell that this is a guy out of Igor MMA in Australia, training with Jamie Mullarkey and a little bit of Alexander Volkanovski when he's not doing the Ultimate Fighter or over in New Zealand. He's really got the tools. Again, when he's from Orthodox, he's going to try and box you. He might throw a few kicks. When he goes southpaw, he is only going to kick. And when he goes southpaw, he throws a kick high, I'd say, to the body. Usually ends up hitting the arms or to the head. Great kicks. Really explosive fighter, too. And I'm eager to see what we get out of Culibao this time. Because, again, for Shayilan, when he tries to get into some of those firefights, it just doesn't really work for him. The fight against Rongzhu, it's like feeling out process. And then you see Rongzhu just kind of step in a little bit, clip him with the right hand, drop him, and that's pretty much all she wrote. He followed up with it. If you go and you look at his last two fights, and I kind of want to highlight those because you got to get back on the horse after a loss like that. I still think Rongzhu's a pretty good prospect, but the fight against Bahetian, who was 20-10 at the time, I honestly scored it, 30-25 on my card. I had it 10-9, round 1, 10-8, 10-8. For Shayilan, because all he did was wrestle and his opponent had zero defenses to it whatsoever. If you go and watch his last fight against Tan Zhao Wang, that's one where he just takes him down. His opponent kind of flops around a little bit. He gains position. He finishes him. He had his absolute way with that. Gets him back flat at one point. Ends up with a rear naked choke. So you can tell that the skills are there from Shayilan. You can tell how good Josh Culibao is on the feet. Maybe we get a little bit of defensive wrestling out there. Those are some of the questions coming into the UFC. Where's the cardio's at this point? But I do love this fight, and I think there's probably an opportunity for a finish here.
Oh, without a doubt. But for me, here's my issue. With Culibao, it's almost better to lose to a guy like Jalen Turner and have a really close fight with a guy like Charles Jourdain than beating a guy 4 months ago who had a record of 3-5. And I understand everyone has guys like that on their record, but the fact that Shayilan has experience against that lower level competition just so recently, it doesn't give me a lot of confidence of, oh, now you beat a guy who's 3-5. Now you're ready for a really tough out in Culibao in your UFC debut. So for me, I have to pick Culibao, but I do think Shayilan could wrestle his way to a victory in this fight.
Yeah, it is a great fight. If you have a look at the odds, Culibao open a -225 favorite. He's a -252 right now. If you look at it for China's Shayilan, he opened a +190. He's at about +202. Over on Tapology, 962 total votes, 82% Culibao, 71% by decision. For the 18% that have Shayilan, 48% by decision. So the fans are thinking decision. I still do think there's a definite possibility for a finish here, but I do like Culibao based on the striking prowess that we've seen prior. Shayilan, good fighter. I just don't know if this is the matchup this time out. It should be a great one, but we both have Culibao here.
Yes, we do.
Both of us going with Australia's Kuya, Joshua Culibao to get the win. Can't wait for the fight. It should be absolute fireworks in our main event. Rob Font taking on Cody Garbrandt. You're not going to want to miss this, so keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.